I'm speaking with one of my all-time favorite composers. His work was one of the select few that was truly a part of my childhood. His work with the great Luc Besson has created an entire filmography of what a director-composer relationship should be, from La Femme Nikita, The Big Blue, The Messenger, Leon, The Fifth Element, Arthur and the Invisibles, The Lady, and the recent box office hit Lucy. He has demonstrated his style as an auteur, but also his versatility as a storyteller. He also helped usher James Bond for one of his best and most unique adventures that indirectly influenced one of the best video games ever made. Recently, he's been touring with his band, the RXRA Group, and even remastering some of his older scores for a new generation of listeners. Eric, thanks so much for seeing me on your visit here in Los Angeles.
Thank you. Thank you for this nice, very gentle introduction. That's very nice.
So I just wanted to, to state we're sitting here at Cafe Primo on Sunset Boulevard. So anybody who's listening, if you're wondering what all that noise is, we're just sitting having some drinks at this cafe. But first, I just wanted to ask, how did you get involved in music? I mean, what was the reason why you focused on film music?
Well, so about music, I started playing when I was 5 years old because my dad was he was I don't know how you call this in English, but in French it's called chansonnier, which is those kind of it's kind of standing how do you call this, a one-man show, standing comedian.
A stand-up comedian.
Stand-up comedian.
Yes.
But his specialty was singing very, very short songs. He had invented something that he called chanson flash, which means flash songs. To give you an example, the shortest one was 1 second.
Wow.
So obviously it was very fun and stupid.
Like a riff on the guitar, like something like that.
Yeah, well, exactly. But it had a meaning and lyrics corresponding and giving it sense, meaning. So anyway, and just this to say that he was when he was performing, he would play guitar himself. So at home he would play guitar and a classical guitar. And so he was obviously my first influence, and he bought me my first guitar when I was 5 years old, and it became very quickly my favorite toy. So I've always played music because I don't remember starting music, because I don't remember anything before 5 years old. So to me, doing music is super, very natural.
Right.
That's really my. And also, he was smart enough to never push me to learn music, to study music. So it's always stayed my freest, my private garden,
Right.
So I suppose that's why I kept this passion and love for music. And so I started playing when I was 5. Then I had my first electric guitar when I was 11, and that's when I started also performing on stage with a friend who was older than me. But so at the age of 11, I started doing this. That's when I also discovered then the power of music on the audience, and especially, the seductive power when you are playing music on stage.
It's almost like a drug, I'm sure. You get up there and the entire audience is going crazy.
Exactly, it's a drug. A really hard one. And then I became professional musician when I was 16, so very young.
Right.
And so originally I was really a performer. Like I would play. I was a performer and a session musician too. I did the job as a session musician. And it's when I was doing this at 18 years old approximately. I was recording in a studio on an album for a French singer, and a friend of his came to visit in the studio one day, and he was a young guy who had been assistant on a movie, as an assistant director on a movie, and who was dreaming of doing movies. A couple of months later, and he was the same age as me, and so we became a bit friends. A few months later, he directed a music video for this same singer, so I was also acting in the video because I was playing guitar. And then a few months later, this same guy did his first short movie, and this guy was Luc Besson.
Oh wow!
And his first short movie was my first music, because he did ask me to compose for it, to score it, and that was my first official composition.
Wow!
And then he asked me again for his first long form movie. Then for the second one. The second one was already a huge success in France, and the music was very successful because there was a rock band in the movie.
Yeah.
So there were songs and actually I was acting in the movie also.
Was that Subway?
That was Subway.
Yeah.
And in France and in some countries in Europe and also in Japan, it was a big success. And the music was, I got my first French music award for this music, and my first gold album, and etc. And so that's how it all started.
Wow. So, I mean, what kind of music did you listen to growing up? I mean, were you aware of film before you met Luc, or was that just a brand new world to you? I mean, and also, what kind of, pop music, rock music were you listening to?
I was listening to originally rock music. My favorite band was Led Zeppelin, and I was into those bands, like at this time it was Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin was my favorite, The Who, and no, I had absolutely no idea of soundtracks and no interest, especially, and this really happened by accident because Luc Besson asked me to score his first movie. Actually, my first answer was no, I'm not a composer, and but he insisted because he was sure I was a composer because he had seen me improvising, and for him it was meaning that I was a composer. Which is a complete mistake, but thank him that he insisted. And so that's why when I did my first soundtrack, I had zero influence from soundtracks.
Yeah, you'd never listened to it.
No, exactly. So, and I didn't even think like, oh, I have a movie to score, maybe I should check out what they do.
Yeah.
And no, I didn't. I was very naive and probably stupid, so I didn't think about this. I thought, well, okay, well, I'm going to do some music then on those images. And so that's probably why when you listen to my soundtracks, especially the early ones, they don't sound at all like any other soundtracks because there was zero influence. And then much later, when I started to compose for symphonic music, symphonic orchestra, then I was more influenced because I thought about that, because the first time we started doing symphonic music, obviously it was because all those big movies coming from here, Hollywood, they had this big music like John Williams, etc. And that's our generation. It's like Star Wars when I was 15 or 16. Wow. And so probably I've been influenced unconsciously. But very soon when I decided to do symphonic music and I listened to those composers, I decided that I preferred to be influenced by the originals, which were Stravinsky, Wagner, and Gustav Holst, the planets. Because obviously those people have been influenced by those classical composers. And so instead of getting my influence to already something influenced, I thought it was more interesting to go to the source, the origin. So then I started listening to a lot of classical music. But so to go back to what I was listening to, so originally rock music, then I realized that everything I was listening to was only for learning the guitar solos. That's why actually I was listening to a lot of Deep Purple, because Richie Blackmore was actually my first guitar teacher.
Oh wow.
Well, I never met him. But
okay. Yeah, indirectly.
Voilà. I was listening and reproducing his guitar solos, and after that, after a couple of years, I had learned almost all of his solos, so I needed something new and something more complicated to improve, to improve my skills.
Right.
And that's when I discovered jazz rock music, and the first guitarist I discovered in this area was John McLaughlin, and then Jeff Beck and those kind of people. And so it took me to another level of difficulty, and for all those years I was only listening to music it was like my music school.
Right.
So it was very bizarre. All the songs, for example, every time I would sing the guitar solos, not the lyrics. No, really, I swear. That was very bizarre.
But I think it's the best, because I interviewed John Powell, he's a composer, and people ask him, do you listen to film music? And he goes, no, why would I ever do that? Why would you, his quote is, why would you ever eat where you shit? Because it's a snake eating the tail. He says, if you keep listening to film music, it becomes the same thing. So he looks at other inspiration kind of outside, and I thought that was a pretty unique way of looking at it.
Yeah, exactly.
So you told us how you met Luc Besson. Over the years, do you find that it gets easier to work with him, or maybe more difficult because you guys are so familiar with each other? Is it harder to find new ways to say things, or is it you guys are so quick and shorthand and everything like that now?
I would say that artistically, it's easier and easier. Because we know well, it's not easier and easier, but
right.
It was easier and easier for the first few years, but now it's been such a long time that it doesn't become even easier.
It's like a new thing every time.
It's fine. We know each other so well that it's fine. But it's much more complicated for dealing in contracts. The more we know each other, the more it's complicated.
Yeah. Because, there were a few films that you guys didn't work on together. Was that just because of contractual disputes, or was it scheduling?
No, it was... it was...
Obviously you're okay now. You work with Lucy. And
Yeah. No, it was half scheduling and half just... he was wanting to try something different, just to make a change, which I understand, because I did all of his movies but two, which is not a lot in 30 years, so I'm actually surprised that we did all these movies together, so just two is really nothing. So he wanted to try something else. He wanted to put himself in a more difficult situation,
right.
like to break the habits.
Yeah. So then, when you are working on a film now, especially with Luc, when you know you're going to be scoring his film, at what point in the production process do you come in? Do you read the script? Do you start going, okay, I can know this? Or do you wait till the final cut, or a rough cut of the film? Like, when do you start applying music to the process?
Well, I start by reading the script. Then, after that, I start thinking of the music, but not necessarily composing and recording anything. It's just, I start wondering what can I do that will match this particular movie, what type of textures, what type of music.
Right.
Am I going to do classical, I mean symphonic or electronic or etc. So and sometimes I also start to try to find themes, but not working with the picture at all.
Yeah.
And so maybe themes, maybe textures, and but then I wait for the movie, for the first cut almost finished, to then start composing precisely on the image,
fitting it to it.
But so for example on Lucy, when I read the script, I thought, wow, this script is really cool, it's really interesting, and it's very modern, it's somewhere very high tech, there are some high tech stuff, but at the same time very organic, because everything is happening inside her.
Right.
So that was my main first reflection. I was like, what can I do that expresses this thing, very high tech and organic? And so I spent a few weeks just tweaking sounds and searching for something that would express this. And I found it at some point. I found this weird sound that I use at the beginning of the movie, especially. That sounds exactly like this. It sounds very, that it's synthetic, that it's modern, but at the same time it sounds organic. It's almost like, it feels like coming from inside a body, like it's really bizarre. And so I was very happy that I found this sound, because it was exactly the idea. Then, once and also I had decided I wanted to try to renew myself too, like to renew, not to sound like the previous one, or I'm always trying to do things like this, and especially this time I wanted to, and so I decided to put on the side all my, my usual sounds, my samples. I really tried to force myself to do something new and not to use my usual tricks.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Which I'm very familiar with, and I love them. I love the sounds.
Yeah, I love them too. That's the problem. That's why it was so difficult, because I love them too. Obviously, that's why I'm using them usually. But this time, I wanted, because I thought, if I want to sound like I've done something really new, I can't use my sounds, because otherwise, you will have recognized, that's the... And so, as much as possible, I tried to do this. I must admit that after, when I was like at the middle of the process of middle of the soundtrack, then I started using some of them, because I thought, oh shit, those sounds are great. I can't not use them at all.
Right.
So, but that's why they're less than usual.
So if you had to pick, when you're on any movie, I know it's going to be different for every movie, but what's really the first thing that sparks an idea? Is it the character, the plot, the cinematography? Like, what's really that you look at, or you just look at it all and whatever speaks to you maybe pops up?
Yeah, no, I don't have any. I have no idea. It depends on the movie. I'm really. That's the way I work. It's really emotional and really
responsive. Yeah.
I don't have any concept of how do I score a movie. I have no idea. I just watch it or read it and compose what I feel emotionally. So it can be different things depending on the movie. And
that's a good answer. I like that.
Obviously, when it's a movie with Scarlett Johansson or Salma Hayek, I suppose I'm a lot inspired by the actress. But
visual inspiration.
Yeah, but no, it really depends.
Very different process. I did want to kind of touch on. I'm sure you've been asked so much about The Fifth Element, but it's one of my favorite movies. You're probably tired of answering questions all these years, but it was one of those movies, that I still quote every day in my life. We watch it all the time. I think it's one of the best science fiction films ever made. So when you're creating this universe, this science fiction universe, how do you decide what the future sounds like? You were doing a lot of interesting textures. You had weird vocals and all this stuff. How did that kind of congeal to come to be?
Well, when I remember the first thing Luc Besson told me when we started this, he said, I want you to compose the music of the 25th century. And I said, oh, cool, thank you.
And go.
Easy. So obviously, how would I know? And so the only conceptual thing I decided is that probably in the 25th century it will be even more how do you say multicultural, like mixed,
so
cosmopolitan, especially at this time, because it's already much more cosmopolitan now, mixed everywhere than it was at this time. But so that was obviously the first obvious idea, is to mix everything. That's why in this movie you can find symphonic, ethnic, funk, jazz. I decided I could mix anything, as long as it sounded good to me.
Melodically.
And so I had done this already for the professional. But this time I could do it even more because it was 25th century, so I could do also like weird sounds because there was no limit. There was absolutely no limit.
Blank canvas.
So I tried to, and I was having fun. That's it.
It was a fun movie. It's a fun score too. I love the score so much. And another iconic film you did, of course, was GoldenEye. And I know there's a lot of critics about the score, all the purists and all that. But I found it to be one of the. It was like what was it, 95, 96?
95.
So I was I think around 9 years old. That was the first Bond movie I saw. So I didn't come with the John Barry in the background. So that was the first Bond movie I saw. And even when I go back today, after I love Bond, all the Bonds, but it works so well for the film, and I love it so much.
Thank you.
Did you feel pressure? Did you feel obligation? It was such a big franchise. Were you nervous taking that project?
Well, it's bizarre because at this time I was really spoiled. Like I didn't need to work, because I had very big, successful things before. So, and I've never wanted to become, the industrial soundtrack composer. So I didn't want to work at this time. So, and I had just started working on my solo album at this time. And so when they called me, my first reaction is I did refuse. I did pass on the movie. Wow. I didn't want to do it. But finally, Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson, they insisted. They really wanted me to score this movie because they were big fans of The Professional, and I met them, and they were really nice people. Which was really cool. And so finally, for different reasons, I finally did it. Now, actually, I'm very happy that I did it, because if I had not done it today, I would think, oh, what an idiot, because it's so great. I've done a James Bond. That's especially for a French guy, it's amazing.
I know. That's always British composers they always hire.
Exactly, it's exactly my generation. Because when I was a kid, James Bond was the only hero.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have yet Indiana Jones or all those guys didn't exist at this time. So James Bond was the only one, and I was a huge fan of James Bond as a kid. So when they asked me, and finally when I was in my studio with the new James Bond and I had to do the music on it, I was like dreaming a little bit. And I had complete freedom.
Wow.
Because they really wanted at this time to completely renew the James Bond thing. That was the whole idea, was the new actor, etc.
New era.
And so they did let me completely free, like 100%. They just asked me to use the main theme, the James Bond theme, a few times in the movie. They actually asked for, I think I remember they did ask for, if you use it 5 times in the movie, that's fine. I finally used it a bit more because, even to my opinion, a James Bond movie without this theme is not a James Bond movie. So I really, it was not a problem for me to have to use it.
But you broke it down and you kind of built it into like the kind of base structure of your score. That the GoldenEye Overture, you kind of took that dun da da dun, but you kind of made it your own and you kind of broke it down. It was so good.
Well, that was the idea, because I wanted to find a special way, original and new to use it, and so I had a lot of fun doing it. Finally, at the end, I had some little problems with them because I was really not happy with the mix, the final mix of the movie. Because we had a discussion at the very beginning, and I had explained to them that what they were big fans of, for example, with my work with Luc Besson, was not only my music and the style of my music and the quality of my music, which was being very honest. I was telling them it's also the mix, the way it's used in the movie. That every time with Luc, when there is a conflict, for example, between sound effects and music, the music has got priority. And so I was explaining this to them. That's a very important point you have to understand, because if it's not mixed this way, it's not going to make sense.
No effect.
And they were listening to me, very interested, and finally, at the last minute, they did the opposite.
They replaced your music, didn't they?
No, just on one cue. That was one cue that they wanted the big James Bond theme with very old-fashioned orchestration, and I didn't want to do it, so they did it without me. And that was a mistake, but as I said, at this time I was a bit spoiled, but after that, when the movie was opened, I really was very upset with the mix, because it's not because we couldn't hear my music, because I understand sometimes that the music can be lower, or why not? No problem with that. But then I would compose something different. My music at this time was, especially at this time, was based on a lot of little details, especially in the percussions, to make it groove, etc. A lot of tiny details, very precisely adjusted and mixed. And when I heard the music, the way they had mixed it with the sound effects, you could only hear like 10% of those details, which suddenly was not making any sense then, because what you would hear was just a part of something. it's like, let's say, for example, if you have, so it's going to be tough to understand on the audio, but you seeing me, so
okay,
it's like if you make if I do something with my hands, and if I manage to do a special shape, that's going to be very interesting and original.
Yeah.
If suddenly at the end you only see this of my hands, it's not going to make any sense.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, if I know that at the end you're going to see this, I'm going to do something different.
Right.
I'm going to do something with just the top of my hands.
Right.
So, and that's exactly what happened with this mix. So I was really upset. But the movie was so successful that they told me, because I had to tell them that I was upset. Because at this time, especially, you know, I was still young and very defending my art, and I had to tell them. And I remember, I will always remember, I had this discussion with Michael Wilson in Tokyo, because it was the first time I was meeting with him again after this incident. And I told him that, and he looked at me and he said, "Eric, you are in the movie #1 on the planet and you're not happy." And I looked at him and I said, that's not what I'm talking about. Of course I'm happy to be on the, but I was talking about an artistic point of view. And he was talking
but he's a
about
producer, he sees it differently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and so it was terrible because it was like we were like people from different planets trying to communicate. Anyway, after many years now, I'm still very happy that I did this movie. Then I heard a lot of critics, and so I'm glad that you say that you like it, because I heard a lot of bad critics, and I thought it was bizarre, because at the same time I think, to what I've been told, it's the second biggest sale in James Bond soundtracks.
Oh wow, okay.
The record company told me that #1 is Goldfinger, and #2 is GoldenEye. So it must be not so bad, I suppose.
No, I have my copy. I know everyone who bought it. You know, it was, I know you didn't do the video game, but I'm sure, I don't know if you're aware of the video game they made. They made a N64 game, and that was huge. And I know the composer who worked on it. His name is Grant Kirkhope. He's a Scottish composer, and he took the only thing he took from your score to make it sound very GoldenEye was that sound that you always use that I love, and it kind of found its way into the video game to make it sound like your score. But so I do want to know, where did that sound come from? That kind of submarine kind of echo. It was in the Leon as well.
Yeah, the very first time I used it, actually, it was in the Big Blue.
Right. Yeah.
And it was at this time it was. It's called a Crystal Bachet. Bachet being a name of two brothers who were two French guys who were doing weird instruments, making weird instruments.
So it was a real instrument? It wasn't
originally, yes, but I did sample it. But I sampled it myself from this instrument, and it was a glass organ.
Wow.
So it's, you know, pieces of glass that you play with water, you know, this kind of instrument. And so if you hit those glass kind of pieces, that was the sound it makes. So originally that was the sound, but then years later I did it. I found another way of doing the same kind of sound, is by detuning a tambourine. If you detune a tambourine like 2 or 3 octaves lower, it does approximately the same sound. And now it's been I don't know, 15 years that you can find this type of sound in all the scene. Anyway, so
no, but I loved it in Leon, and you hear it in GoldenEye, and it's a signature sound that I think a lot of. It's almost like the James Horner Danger motif that he uses, you know, all the time. Let's see, where we go. You also have your band, the RXRA, which you're on tour with. You're going on tour this year.
Yeah. And actually, just to precise, RXRA in French pronounces exactly Eric Serra, like my name.
Eric Serra, okay.
That's why I use this logo. It sounds strictly like my name, not close to, exactly like my name.
Wow.
So that's why it's fun in French. In English, it's a bit weird.
But tell me the difference of writing music for the stage. I mean, you talked about when you started performing and you got that kind of like performance high in front of the audience. I mean, is it different when you're writing songwriting on the stage versus film writing, film music? Is it the same process, the same thoughts? I mean, what is going into your music that way?
Oh, do you mean when I compose?
Versus like when you do on performing or for an album, like a song, versus the film score.
When I compose a song compared to when I compose a score.
Right.
Well, the difference is that you don't have anything on a screen.
Right.
So when you do a soundtrack, you enter someone else's dream, the director's dream, and you help him creating his dream. So you're part of a dream, you're part of something, you're part of an artistic thing.
Right.
When you do a song for yourself, it's your own dream and it's your own piece of art.
Right.
I mean, it's not nobody else. So it's very different because when you do a song, you serve yourself. When you do a soundtrack, you serve a movie. And also technically it's very different because in a movie you're not alone in the sonic universe. Like, you have to respect dialogues, you have to respect sound effects. So you know, it's like the difference in painting, for example. Writing a song is the equivalent of painting on a piece of paper that's completely white. And scoring movie would be to paint something which has already some drawings on it.
Like a coloring book, maybe?
Almost, yeah. No, because you can add shapes and things, but it's not far from this. Yeah.
That's because you have songs at the end of Fifth Element and the end of GoldenEye, which is where you wrote specifically for the film.
No, actually those
they
two
were not.
songs. No, those two songs actually I composed originally for my solo album.
Oh wow!
And they were already composed when I did. Well, when I did GoldenEye. As I told you, I was in the middle of composing my solo album when they called me, and so this song was done already, and I proposed it to Barbara Broccoli, and she did take it, and then. But yeah, and at this time it was just a demo that I finally recorded it for the movie, but it was already composed. And when I did and the one in the Fifth Element, the Little Light of Love, that was already recorded and mixed because my solo album was ready to be released, and I just waited because as it was about to be released, I started working on the Fifth Element, so the record company decided to hold it, to release it after the Fifth Element. But the song was already, the whole album was already finished.
Right.
So both songs were originally for my solo album.
Wow.
Little Light of Love is in my solo album, and the other one, the James Bond one, is not in my solo album because it was in the movie.
Right. So they wanted it.
And finally, because I did hold my solo album 2 years after GoldenEye, I thought I'm not going to put it back in my solo album now. It doesn't make any sense.
I also saw you're going back and kind of remastering some of your older scores. So I mean, now that you have this newer technology and everything, and you're going back and revisiting things, what do you? I mean, what is the object when you remaster something? Are you trying to make it just sound better? I mean, what is the process involved with kind of repolishing your old scores?
Well, yeah, it's just remastering is to make it just to make it sound better, to make it sound more from now. Because if you those first CDs, if you listen to one of those old CDs just after a very new one from a band or something, you're gonna hear the big difference, the global quality of the sound, you know. So it's to upgrade it to new standards,
right?
And to try to improve it, because especially my very first ones, I had no idea at this time what was the mastering. I didn't even go to the mastering. I mean, it went to the mastering, but I didn't know. To me, when it was mixed, it was finished. I was done. I learned about mastering for my. The first time I went to mastering was for the Big Blue, which was my third soundtrack. Because before that I didn't know. So obviously when I did remaster my two first ones, The Last Battle and Subway, I did a huge improvement because it was no mastering and new mastering. So I improved it a lot. But you know, even the Big Blue that I had mastered originally, we managed to improve it a lot because of the new equipment now, and and also because my experience is different now. So I've mastered a lot of albums. So I must admit that, you know, for example, The Fifth Element. We couldn't improve it so much because it was not so long ago, and so the difference between then and now is not so huge. So I would lie if I was pretending that we did improve a lot the Fifth Element one. But as we had started remastering all of them, I thought it's worth doing it for all of them. And plus we also. The reissue is with a lot of bonus, like with a big booklet with like 20 or 25 pages with photos, with comments, with anecdotes, and it's a real cool thing for the fans.
Absolutely. I wrote my first liner notes just recently for a James Newton Howard score, so that was my first time doing it. It was a pretty cool process to kind of research the film and kind of talk with Moser. But so kind of looking back on,
and we did also add in some of them some audio bonus. Like demos. For example, the Big Blue, there are some demos. Original demos, so for fans it's great, you know.
No, it's interesting to see the kind of puzzle pieces building up to the main thing. And kind of looking back on all your work, on all your film scores, do you have a personal favorite, like one or two that really are kind of your favorite to your heart? Are they all your babies?
Yeah, exactly. It's difficult to say because it's all my babies, but if I really had to, under the torture, that would probably be The Professional.
No, it's a very good score.
Because, you know, I never listen to my own music because it's like watching myself in the mirror. But sometimes it happens when I have to, like, for example, when I remaster or... So once in a while I have to listen. And I have to say that The Professional has a really strange effect on me. It impresses me. When I listen to it, I find it really impressive. Like it's got something really powerful, like a very powerful character. And I think the mix between those ethnic percussions and those Arabic melodies and the symphonic orchestra works really well, and that's what I love in this soundtrack.
It's a very emotional soundtrack too. I mean, it's very to the core of the character. It's such a beautiful story
very
too.
Powerful, very strong.
The big fight, the end, those 3 parts, really fantastic. But to wrap up the interview, I know I've kept you here for some time, but I love to ask this to every composer. So if you could score any movie ever made, pretending the original score never existed, what film would you pick?
Well, I always, because I had this question before, I always say Amadeus as a joke, of course.
Get that Mozart out of there.
Okay, apart from Amadeus, but so you mean the movie I would have loved to do, not the music I would have loved to. I mean, just because I'm in love with the music.
Right. Pretending the music never existed. No disrespect to the original composer. If you had to present it to you clean, this is the opportunity, like in the past maybe, anything, a playground that you'd love to, attempt.
Well, I guess it's the same question as what's your favorite movie? No?
I guess, maybe.
Probably. So it's difficult to say. There are a couple of. There would be maybe. I couldn't tell one. I could tell a few.
Okay.
And then you decide.
What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
2 first. Well, 3 first that come in mind would be Apocalypse Now, Deer Hunters, The Jungle Book. Well, of course, Star Wars, Alien.
I feel like you would do a great Alien, a sci-fi horror kind of thing. I feel like your soundscape would be so perfect for this.
Yeah, I would love this. Yeah, I would love this. I've never done actually this scary movie, and I would love to do this because that must be really fun to do.
Yeah. No, I think it'll be perfect. But Eric, thank you so much for your time. It's been such an honor to talk to you today. Thank you for meeting me here and talking.
Thank you very much.